I remember playing Blood Omen 2 back on the PS2 and having fond memories of this game, where I went through 2 discs of this game back in the day, where I did numerous of playthroughs where I got to play as a badass vampire. So how did this game live up to my expectations when I went back to play it after all these years? Or was it just nostalgia? Blood Omen 2 is a third person action slight puzzle game at times, where you once again play as the vampire Kain. I think that this is the oddest one out of the Legacy of Kain series, where it takes place in the Industrial Revolution time mixed with the Knight Errantry time. Saying that, I think that this is a unique idea that the game designers had. For the story, it takes place after the events of Blood Omen 1, but before Soul Reaver in the timeline, where I think that these are the new memories of Kain at the end of Soul Reaver 2. It starts off with Kain leading an army to conquer Nosgoth, and Kain's legion meets the Sarafan force on the battlefield, where Kain's army is defeated, and Kain himself was vanquished by the Sarafan Lord in combat. And after that event, Kain was near death and has been in a coma for about 200 years and seems to suffer a bit of amnesia when he wakes up and quickly finds out that vampires are on the verge of being exterminated again. And now Kain is the hope of the vampire resistance called the Cabal. Yeah, weird name. Where his face is not known. It's why they looked after him after all these years, why he slumbered. And now Kain is awake and in the mood for vengeance on the Sarafan Lord. For the controls, they are simple to get used to once when I remapped them. Nevertheless, I did not have to remap most of the controls like I did in Soul Reaver 2, so it saved me a bit of time on that regards. The tutorial I discovered gets to the point quickly, and the game lets you know that vampires have a natural weapon, their claws, right from the start of the game. There's a lock-on in combat, and I quickly discovered that the lock-on to targets to be oversensitive at times when I was facing multiple of enemies. It switches to a new target when I didn't want it to, although when it was on 1v1 it worked brilliantly. You can dodge and block and pick up any weapons that you find, however these weapons have a degradation system, what made me change the weapons often, especially later on in the game, and my favourite one's got to be that oversized meat cleaver. I really have no idea why it was my favourite. And vampires still have their weaknesses to water. It burns their skin, and if Kain is submerged in it, it will kill him instantly. And there are dark gift powers, and some of them charge up by enemies attacking you and you blocking their attack until it glows red and Kain releases a powerful attack. And there's a misform what allows me to sneak up on the enemies and kill them instantly, and some of these animations are quite cool and brutal by the way how Kain kills his enemies. I found the combat more engaging than Soul Reaver 2 and encouraged me to engage in combat as much as I can to gain more health, where the more you feed the more harder you are to kill. Once when this purple bar gets up and filled, Kain grows more health. So I was killing everything that I came across and drinking its blood to make Kain more stronger, and Kain health also drains over time, what also encouraged me to feed more often throughout the game. I've got to say that the feeding animations were cool at first, although over time it does get tiring where I was feeding a lot throughout the game. It's the same animations what play over and over and over and over again. The enemies have their standard attacks and heavy attack, and some have this berserk attack what will break your block instantly while indicated in red, and these are the ones that I had to dodge because they do a lot of damage to Kain. And I enjoyed that there were different level enemy types, and how they attacked me was different to the other enemies as I progressed throughout the game. And yet the enemies do become predictable by the way they attack, and how certain enemies do take a bit too long to defeat towards the end of the game. And I end up using this immortal power too much to speed things up where it kills the target instantly. And yes, I love this overpowered dark gift because I realise it is groovy to use. I mean, cool. The boss fights have their own unique way to defeat them for you to figure out, and each boss fight has different stages to the fight. Like the first half of their health, they follow a pattern. When their health falls below a certain amount though, they change the way they fight for me to figure out their new pattern now. There's usually 3 stages to a boss fight, except once when I found out and learnt the pattern, the fight just became way too easy. when you defeat a vampire boss fight, you get their dark gifts such as jump, hypnosis, berserk, and so on, what adds to the puzzles later on. The game takes place in a city called Meridian, the capital of Novskov, for the most I would say. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that, where Novskov is practically unrecognisable. The game seems to be set in chapters, just that I had a hard time reading it, where the load screens were about half a second long, where I was running this off an NVMe drive. For the main missions, you really just follow the path what's laid out in front of you and solve minor puzzles along the way. I appreciated that I got to see all these new places throughout the game, and there don't seem to be any backtracking whatsoever, unless I was solving a puzzle, and how each stage seems to have their own atmosphere, from a city metropolis to a wasteland with horror creatures. And each stage had their own gothic feel to it, especially that prison stage. It's the stuff of nightmares, what would give Freddy Krueger nightmares. What would make you insane with these people on hooks, with their limbs cut off and others being fed to giant arachnids. So I think that the stages themselves were brilliantly designed on that front. There are checkpoints little throughout the stages, and I found out that I could save at any time, yet it only saves up to the last checkpoint that I came across. That's something that I just had to keep in mind when I was saving. And I kept on having frame rate drops often throughout the stages, from 60 to 30, it regularly kept on doing that to me. And I don't know what was the cause of this. And I do like that the game seems to reward me for exploring where I would find more of these add health grow boxes, and I enjoyed the fact that the game got me searching for all of these. But there is a downside to all this exploring, is the ladder climbs. Kain just seems to go painfully slow climbing these ladders, what just annoyed me. But there is a plus for me, is that Kain changes his outfits throughout the campaign. He knows his style. There are these glyph puzzles and other minor puzzles along the way, only I noticed that these puzzles are simple and very basic. It usually involves hitting a switch or multiple switches, or move a box, something along those lines. They do get a bit better when you require new dark gifts, but not by much. The puzzles in Soul Reaver 2 were much better. It seems like they were going for a more action feel here, and the puzzles were a second thought to the game. Deactivate this green force field so I could go through it. I think the soundtrack is alright, however I've got to admit that boss fight music is epic. For the cutscenes, they're in-game scenes most of the time, however they're really nothing special about them apart from when Kain meets the Sarafan Lord. That's really the only one what I can remember. But I found the CG cutscenes at the end of the game badass, where Kain was walking away from this green explosion. Although I still don't understand why I can't skip the cutscenes. This is frustrating when I was near at the end of the game and I had multiple game crashes and I had to sit and wait over and over and over again as the same scene played. For some reason there are still no subtitle options. At this point I just think that the game designers just hate subtitles because the previous game did not have them either. The voice acting is alright for the most, and Kain's voice acting is superb. It's just too bad that the dialogue is not all that. And the actors do seem like they are trying their best with what they got, and I don't blame the actors here. Such as Yanis Ordering in Soul Reaver 2 has good voice acting. Just in this it's questionable at times, especially his last line. It seems like something's got lost in the translation here to the actors. The graphics have taken a hit from Soul Reaver 2, mainly I noticed this on the NPCs, but I've got to give credit when credit is due. When it comes to the Sarafan stronghold, there are mules there what just looked awesome. And some of the graphic level design I was impressed by on how it sums up the atmosphere by the buildings. As for characters, I didn't really find any of them memorable, and Vorador is back somehow from the dead from the first Blood Omen game, and he looks bad in Blood Omen 2, like really bad. Nevertheless, it's not just him, it's most characters, they kind of look bad compared to Soul Reaver 2. Apart from Kain and the Sarafan Lord, they're the only ones what actually look good to me. For how long the game is, I clocked on around about 15 hours, where I was always hunting for them health grow boxes. On the contrary, if I was not always doing that, I could see this game done in around about the 11-hour mark. So in the end, I thought that Blood Omen 2 is a good game to me. It's just not on the same level as Soul Reaver 2. Especially on the storytelling side of things, it's kind of really basic on this. At this point in time, I can't recommend the PC version where I had to do a bit of tinkering to get this game running right. Although, if you're comfortable in doing that, then I would recommend it. So have you played it? What do you think of it? Leave it in the comments below. Until next game, I'm off.